Hello, everybody. It is Tom, the very lowest of men of 6++ here, and I am back with some advice for you all. Now, one thing I get all the time is, Tom, you're a really positive person and you're always finding ways to help us develop in the game and succeed in it. But what if you turned that mind and put it to some real use, like helping people to stay down and miserable in 40K? I realize I've been neglecting miserable people and particularly negative people in the community and not making enough content aimed at them in recent times. So I thought, as a sort of Christmas gift on the eve of Christmas and in honor of Ebenezer Scrooge, I would make a little video specifically for that demographic because God knows they've been overlooked for long enough. So without further ado, here are my 5 tips for staying miserable in 40K. Number 1, 40K is only fun when you're winning. Now, this one is genius. Not winning is one of the 2 most likely outcomes to happen in any game of 40K that you play. So I think it's really useful and important to be very upset if it looks like that's going to happen. It's obviously often very much out of your control. It's going to come down to the matchups and player skill and missions that you come across. And sometimes it's just going to happen. So I think being ready to always be annoyed and angry about losing is a really useful way of starting things off, setting a good tone, and making sure that you are frustrated and cross an awful lot of the time in your 40K journey. So that's my first tip. I think it's really good to start off with that one, establish a good baseline of misery, and then build up from there. So my next one is 40K is only fun if it stays the same. The armies in game are always changing, so I think attaching your value to how well you do at a particular moment in time is a really good way of ensuring you're constantly disappointed when the game changes. 40K gets new rules almost every week, the entire game resets every few months, and the entire edition resets every few years. So I think being annoyed and angry every time that this happens and focusing on what you don't like is a really good way of making sure your frustration stays topped up. Obviously, change is constant, so if you get annoyed with change, then you can be annoyed constantly. It's absolutely brilliant. Next up, we have number 3. 40K is only fun if nothing is too strong or too weak. 40K has over 30 different armies, it has hundreds of detachments, and it has thousands of different ways to play. So spending as much time as you can fixated on the 1 or 2 things that are too strong or the 1 or 2 things that are too weak is a really good way to ensure that you ruin the experience for yourself and others the whole way through. Okay, you've got so many different options, so many things to get excited about. If you can just lock in your attention on the outliers and the exceptions to the rule, then you can guarantee that you're not going to enjoy the game as much as you otherwise would. If something is too weak, I recommend constantly complaining about it. And if you want to, you can even play it expecting different results and then be really upset and cross when it doesn't work. That's a really good one. You know, taking something that's definitely known to not be very good, then being disappointed when it's not very good. That one's a classic, absolute classic. I think it's really important to let your appreciation of and use of armies and detachments especially be defined by whether they are too powerful or too weak, because that way you have a surefire way to never be in control of your own hobby and play and stay that little bit sad all the time. Obviously, with Grotmas, so many detachments coming out, this is a really good opportunity to practice that. One thing I recommend is making sure you only play the new detachment your army got if everyone on the internet says it's definitely the best one, because that's a really useful way of making sure you only ever do one thing at a time and don't try anything different or learn anything new. Right, next up we have number 4, and this is one of my personal favourites. 40K is only fun if we constantly compare everything. Now, 40K itself is a sci-fi game designed to reflect the endless diversity, creativity, and innovation of a far-flung future. So I think we should definitely all expect every single army in it to have the same tools and play the same way. If another army gets something you don't have or is better than yours, be sure to comment on it in a bitter and negative way when it happens. I think this helps to make sure that any new news or rules or changes are essentially a miserable experience for the majority of the player base, because obviously only one army is getting the thing. Really useful if everyone else can then neg on it and be miserable about it. If you spend your entire time worrying about an army that beats yours that's out there somewhere that you might have to play against now and again, it's a really good way of effectively taking the edge off your own play experience with an army on an almost 24/7 basis. Fun tip, this actually works really well for player skill and hobbying ability in painting as well. There's nothing like dwelling on your own limitations to really get the most out of being miserable all the time in 40K. that one, the comparison one, guys, it's just, and it works so well in the rest of your life too. If you want to do that, just absolutely spoil it for yourselves. Highly recommend. My final tip for today, and the most important one, is that the game is only fun if we all have exactly the same opinion. Never allow yourself to run unusual units, detachments, or armies that the internet and others don't think are good. This is a really great way of allowing your hobby experience to be dictated by a tiny percentage of people, kind of like letting the very wealthy run the entire world. Be sure to disagree loudly and often with others, and do so in a mean spirited and negative fashion as much as you can. If you can escalate disagreements, that's really, really good. The internet is largely for taking pot shots that you'd never take in real life at people you know nothing about. So be sure to use your online presence in 40k for this as much as you can. Remember that disagreements are almost never resolved well on the internet, so make sure that this is where you argue as much as you possibly can. All right, guys. Hopefully that's given you a good set of briefings for staying miserable this Christmas. From me and Scrooge here, thanks so much for following 6++ this year. I think probably I'll rest the negative content for a little while and get back to doing what we do best, which is getting excited about this wonderful game and all the wonderful people in it after Christmas. So we'll see you all again very, very soon. Lowest of Men, out. Bye-bye.